Hello, today I would like to go over a really fun and engaging way you can work with your students when you're addressing the Math Essential Element 5, MD2, which is represent and interpret data on a picture, line plot, or bar graph. And what I want to show you here is I have some Skittles graphing. And what you can do with your students is you can embed this screenshot that I took of a PDF right into a Jamboard. You just go to Set Background, pick the image right here, and just embed that, right? So you can embed this into your Jamboard, and then you can go through this with your students. You can have your students participate on the Jamboard, and you can go through and also model and show your students how you would graph if, say, you had a bag of Skittles and you wanted to pull out different candies at random and graph how many you had in a bag. Of course, you don't have to use Skittles. You can use a bag of crayons. You can create shapes instead of calling them Skittles. They could just be color graphing, circle graphing, whatever you want to do. M&Ms, crayons, markers, whatever works for you. You could pretend they're Skittles and just cut out circles and have the colored shapes in, right? So whatever works. You can have your parents participate if they're willing and they want to purchase a candy for your students. You can absolutely do that, but no need. It is not required. You can make this as homemade as you want, and it definitely is accessible and you can utilize it in any way, right? So the point is that you have your students engaging with the graph, you have them coloring in the different boxes, you have them identifying what color you pulled out and where that's going to go on your graph, and then they're going to be able to compare and contrast the different variables within the graph, right? So say for example, I had my bag of Skittles, I pulled out maybe only 10 to start, right? I want to go over it with my students. So I'm like, okay, I go into my little Ziploc bag and I pull out a yellow Skittle. So I'm going to show my students, right? I'm going to go to my marker, make sure I pick a thick one, get my right color, and then I'm going to go in and I'm going to color in my box, right? So I color in my box. You can have your students take turns after you show them what it is you're doing, and they can go in and do the same thing, right? Like that's what we talked about. The beauty of this Jamboard is that they can all take turns. If you want your students to be able to identify what color it is with their paraprofessional, you can have them say, okay, what color is Miss Mary going to pick for you? Okay, she's going to pick yellow. How many Skittles did I pull out? Okay, I pulled out one. So I'm going to color in only one box, right? And you go in your bag, you go in your crayon box, you go in whatever it is that you want to pull out next. You pull out a red one, and then you're like, okay, what color was it? Do I need to make my marker green or red? Red. Where on my graph am I going to put in and track my information? Am I going to put it by the red because I pulled out red, or am I going to put it by the purple? Right? You want to teach them, they need to find the color that they're representing on their bar graph, and then you go on in, right, and you color it in. Or like I said, you can have them take turns, right? If they get it and they're super excited and ready to do this, have them go in, color in the box. Doesn't have to be super perfect, right? So you go through, you pull out another red Skittle, and you color in another box, right? You can go through, you can have your students draw a Skittle, right? Make a little circle, right? Whatever you guys want. So you can go in there, you color it in, have your students represent it. Just make sure that they are representing each of the items in the same way. So if they're drawing Skittles, that's all you would do. If we're drawing boxes, that's all you're going to do, right? We don't change from a pictograph to a bar graph in the middle of it, right? That's not consistent. We don't want to do that, right? So you have it here. This is just for example. Pardon my coloring outside. I'm going to go and I will use the eraser. Look at that. You could just go right there and take that off like it never happened. Okay, so you went through, you got through 4 different trials, you found 3 red Skittles and 1 yellow. So now you can go through and talk to your students, say, okay, well, let's see which line is longer, right? Which one has more? And then you go through, okay, the red is bigger, it's longer, it has more. And then we can start learning about how many more. Well, let's see, we would need 2 more for it to be the same. So the red has 2 more than the yellow. And you can start working on those different skills when identifying what's happening in a bar graph, right? So you can have that participation when you're learning about graphing, using a Jamboard, finding super motivating items for your students to pull out and creating a graph, right? And embedding it in this Jamboard so they can all take turns. You can have that collaboration and participation and engagement. So let me go through and show you something else I did. So like I said, I took a screenshot of a PDF. So this is my PDF. I then created some examples. So say I don't even want to deal with the candy. That's too much. It's going to be too much for me to manage while I'm also taking data. I just want to have various examples ready to go for my students. Or say we practice this quite a bit and they already practiced shading it in. So now I want to move on and I want to have some examples for them to do and identify how many more, how many variables do we have, right? So how many items, how many more. You can go into your PDF, if it's in a PDF, and you can make some boxes. So what you can do is you go to the shapes icon right here, click on a box. It's going to come out a little bit big. You want to shrink it down to the actual size, and then you just slide it on over, right? So then you can change it any color, right? If we had this box, say, over here instead, we just drag it down to make sure that it is fitting the entire box, and then you go to this shading, and then you would just make it green, right? So then you can do whatever you need. So we can say, okay, well, we have 4 here. So how many Skittles in total? So you'd have them count each of the boxes, right? So then we know that we would have 8 in total. You can say how many more green Skittles do we have, or how many more red Skittles do we have instead of green Skittles? So then they'd have to go and check, right? You can say all different questions. How many orange and green Skittles are there? Are they as many as we have as red? You know, a ton of different questions that all align to what our students would be working on when they're learning about graphing, when they're answering questions about graphs. And then you can take a screenshot of this, right? So you just go into File, you take a screenshot from the selection, just go drag and drop. Here's my little screenshot. I'm not going to do the whole thing. We'll just stop right here at the green. There it is, right? So I'm going to say 3 variables, right? So I know what I'm looking for. It's saved, exit out, and then when I go into my Jamboard, right, I have one example. I talk to my students about it. I have them go through, practice, ask questions, make sure I'm assessing, giving them formative assessment. How many orange? How many all together? How many more red do I have than orange? And then say I want to go in and I want to add what I just clicked on there. I'm going to go to this little add frame, right, click on it. Then I'm going to set that background again, right? So here's my examples of what, let me show you, of what we just did, right? So let me go back and show you real quick. So you go to set background image, and then you hit browse, right? So I saved it as my 3 variables, and here it is, right? And then I'm going to upload it. It'll go right in, and there you go, right? Make sure to unclick something when you're taking a screenshot. So then you can make as many different options and examples as you want as you're going through, right? So you can keep working on your students, building rigor, increasing what it is you want to work on. You can embed pictures if you want to do a pictograph instead of a bar graph, right? So you can go through. The next thing I'm going to show you is we embedded our graph paper, right? So you can have your graph paper right here for when you want to go through and have your students compare and contrast, right? So you can go through, have your students draw a graph if they're ready, or you can have a model like this, like I showed you. You can write in your numbers along the axis. You can type them in. You can type in the things on the bottom. If your students are only up to 2 variables, you say, okay, well, we had 4 red Skittles, so let's go to our marker. Let's make sure we pick red. We have a thick one. We go up to our line. You can show them how you create it, right? You go, here's our red column. We're going to stay in our red column. Okay, we go up to 4. We draw a line across. We come all the way down on each side. And now we have 4. Then for our green, we're going to go back in. We're going to change our color to green. And we had 1 green Skittle. So now we want to make sure we only go up to the 1 line. So we go up, go across, and come down. So now let's talk about this. We have 1 green Skittle and 4. Which one is taller? Which one is more? What do we have more of? We have more red Skittles, right? So this is just a fun way to talk about graphing, learn about graphing, have a really super fun, engaging, and collaborative participation for a graphing activity. Again, use anything that motivates your students. M&Ms, Skittles, crayons, make up those things, make up those items, and most importantly, have fun with your students. I hope this was something new and something interesting that you can use with your class, and I hope your students enjoy it.